Please join me in a moment of silence before our invocation. This invocation is adopted from an invocation used at Wheaton College in Norton, Massachusetts. Spirit of good endings and better beginnings, as we gather here to celebrate the remarkable journey we have shared with the class of 2014, we are acutely aware of our blessings. The privilege of teaching and learning in this place, the freedom to challenge ourselves and each other, the courage to step out of our comfort zones and risk the big questions, questions of meaning, questions of relationship, and of responsibility. But most of all, we are grateful for the blessings of community, of friends, family, and extended Chesapeake College community gathered here, and for those who are with us only in spirit. There's no book that can teach us what we have learned from each other, especially from those whose experience and perspective differ dramatically from our own. Community, diversity, and freedom and risk-taking. These are the hallmarks of a truly higher education.
Please be seated. Welcome to the 46th Commencement exercises of Chesapeake College. Thank you, Mark, for delivering the invocation, and thank you to the Chesapeake Bay Community Band under the leadership of Mr. Fred Hughes for providing the music for tonight's ceremony. It is now my pleasure to introduce the platform party. I would ask that they stand as they are introduced and that you hold your applause until everyone has been recognized. From my right, starting with the back row, Ms. Blenda Armistead, Talbot County Trustee, Mr. Don Bradley, Vice Chair and Dorchester County Trustee, Ms. Jennifer Durgee, Queen Anne's County Trustee, Mr. Vaughn Evans, Dorchester County Trustee, Mr. Nash McMahon, Caroline County Trustee, Mrs. Margaret Myers, Caroline County Trustee, Dr. Michael Pelzar, Queen Anne's County Trustee, Mr. Greg Farley, the 2012-2014 Bounds Distinguished Teaching Chair, and Mr. John Haas, Chair of the Faculty Assembly. And in the front row, Dr. Richard Midcap, Vice President for Student Success and Enrollment Services, Mr. Douglas Gray, Vice President for Technology and Academic Support, Mr. Timothy Jones, Vice President for Administrative Services, Dr. Catherine Barber, Vice President for Academic Affairs, Dr. Edward Baker, Professor of Kinesiology, Ms. Catherine Poe, Chair and Talbot County Trustee, Ms. Michelle Lance, the John T. Harrison Award co-winner, and Ms. Shaylin McLam, the John T. Harrison Award co-winner. And now let's give them a round of applause. I don't believe we have any elected officials with us tonight, but if there are, please stand so I can recognize you. And I would certainly like to let you know that Commissioner Wilbur Levengood from Caroline County was here earlier to greet our honored guests. And I do see in the audience a trustee emeritus, Mr. Dewey Blades, and his wife Connie, so let's say hello to Dewey. Graduates, this is your night. But without the love, patience, and encouragement of the family and friends who have gathered here to celebrate with you, your achievements would not be possible. Please join me in a round of applause for your special guests. This evening is also made possible by a faculty, administration, and staff dedicated to student success. You will hear more about the faculty later, but I would like to take a moment to acknowledge a staff member, Ms. Ann Bishop, who is retiring after 17 years of service at Chesapeake College, and she plays a critical role, many of you met her this morning, in making sure each of you has your actual diploma. So would the graduates and the audience please join me in acknowledging Anne and all the outstanding faculty and staff of Chesapeake College. I would now like to introduce the chair of the Chesapeake College Board of Trustees, Trustee Catherine Poe, to make a special presentation.
Would Mr. Tim Kagan please join me on the stage? The Chesapeake College Board of Trustees, on the advice of the President, confers the Chesapeake College Community Service Award to an individual or individuals whose efforts have resulted in a positive impact on the college community and the Midshore region. This year's choice, and not only meets that criteria, he dramatically exceeds it. Tim Kagan has committed much of his time and energy over the last 40 years in service to the Midshore community, with particularly impressive service through the Rotary Club of Easton. He has served as the Rotary Club president, was honored with the Rotarians' Donald F. Osborne Club Service Award in 2012, and has been selected multiple times as the Paul Harris Fellow. Tim has been personally involved in Rotary's international work to eradicate polio, traveling to India, where he personally was involved in administering polio vaccines in 2010. The Rotary Club established the Alfred B. Tim Kagan Does Award in 2010 to honor those Rotarians who are going above and beyond the call of duty, just as Tim himself has done. Tim has also served on the board of directors for the Talbot County Chamber of Commerce, which has selected him to be the Businessman of the Year in 1986. He has been a member and a director of the Historical Society of Talbot County, as well as serving on the boards of Bethany House, the Heart Fund of Talbot County, For All Seasons, and the Brighter Christmas Fund. The chairman of Family Ministries, Inc., Tim has also served as character coach for Character Counts of the Midshore. Tim, who founded the real estate firm of Kagan and Associates, Inc., was president of the Midshore Board of Realtors from 1985 to 86 and served 5 years as a board director. He was the Midshore Board of Realtors selection for Realtor of the Year in 1989, and he served as Maryland State Director from 1985 to 1988. Tim was honored in 2013 as the winner of the second annual Adam D. Cockey Jr. Community Leader Award by the Midshore Multiple Listing Service for his commitment to community service and activism. We are especially pleased that Tim has also devoted 9 years to serving on Chesapeake College's foundation and is now co-chair of the Talbot County leadership team for the Campaign for Chesapeake College. Tim, who lives in Easton with his wife Sally, is obviously an outstanding choice for the Community Service Medal. He was also unanimously the choice of our Board of Trustees. So on behalf of the Board of Trustees, administration, faculty, and students, I wish to congratulate Tim on this latest acknowledgement of his impressive community service. Thank you, Tim.
My wife reminded me that she now has my obituary. I'm deeply humbled by your selection and appreciate it very deeply. And I also am very proud to have served these past 9 years on the board of the foundation. It was a great honor, and thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Ken. Next on our agenda is Mr. Greg Farley, Associate Professor of Biology. He has served the last 2 years as the Dr. Stuart M. Bounds Distinguished Teaching Chair. What is that, you may ask? Well, the teaching chair serves as mentor and model for fellow and new faculty, presenting or moderating at least one seminar a semester on teaching excellence each time, and represents the college in selected community activities. Professor Farley, the third winner of this award, will speak briefly on his experiences as the Bounds Teaching Chair, and he will present the fourth Bounds Teaching Chair Award to Amy Childs, who will serve in that role through 2016. Professor Farley.
So I don't know anything. There's one thing I've learned from teaching for as long as I've been doing it. It's that you never really know much, but what you do get is part of a great conversation. So what I'm about to tell you is not what I know. As I tell my students in the classroom, you've reached the end of my knowledge, and it's perilously easy to do. But this is what I believe, and I think it's something about what I've learned along the way. And that's this: I'm fortunate to be able to teach. I'm fortunate to teach science in a complex, changing world that needs honest, unbiased information, probably now more than ever before. Like other academic disciplines, science is the search for knowledge and for truth about natural systems. But unlike other disciplines, it explicitly protects us from bias, and it has built-in mechanisms that protect us against wishful thinking. I'm fortunate to be a scientist, but many years ago I made the conscious decision to teach science, and that has been the greatest of adventures for me. And I think it's an adventure that Aristotle and Socrates probably understood better than Galileo or Newton. But I think it was Newton who said it best, is that if I have seen farther than others, it's because I stood on the shoulders of giants. And I didn't get here without inspiration and without really, really great role models. There's a long list of them, but at the very top, I'd like to thank Mrs. Janice Ferry, who was my first biology teacher, those many years ago, back when dinosaurs still roamed the earth. And I'd like to thank Bill Kirby-Smith at the Duke Marine Lab, who was so excited about brachiopods that he taught an entire lecture and forgot to take off his sunglasses. To Tim Lamperis, who taught me what a really great lecture could be, and to Alec Motton, who gave me my first job teaching undergraduate science. I remain eternally grateful for the ways in which you inspired and informed my own approach to the classroom. I've also learned a lot from my students about what works and what doesn't in the classroom and the lab. I've learned, for example, that if you're going to teach something, you really, 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 really need to understand it, right? Take that with you. That's a good lesson. Don't teach it unless you really know it, right? I've also learned that teachers don't have a monopoly on that understanding, that every one of you walked into my classroom knowing something already, and if I gave you the chance, you could teach it to me. And along the way, I learned that I should do that for you more early and more often than I do. There are a couple of you sitting in the audience tonight who have been really great teachers and mentors of mine, but I'd like to send special thanks out to Whitney Mangum and Greg Uselton for what they've taught me. I've also learned that teaching is probably about 70% what I know, maybe a little less than that. It's also 30%, or maybe a little more, what I say and how I say it. In the grand scheme of my teaching, there's a little bit of stage performance. There's a little bit of U.S. Navy discipline. There's a little tiny bit of Roman Catholic rule following, and any of you who have had me mark up a paper for grammar know what I'm talking about. There's a lot of Episcopalian forgiveness. It helps to have a human skeleton and a dead frog. but it probably helps more to wear a tropical shirt and flip-flops. Teaching is a very human endeavor, and humans like to have fun. Teaching is also a little bit like a really great concert. In my classroom, there's a little bit of that rock and roll arrogance I learned from old Metallica albums. There's a little of the showmanship of Kiss. I know that's a really old reference, so we'll probably phase that over and say Lady Gaga. Right? I strive for the precision and the sheer mastery of Rush and the orchestration and the arrangement that Mozart pulled off. But there's also a lot of room for some Hawaiian slack key improvisation and a little more of the laid back and live and let live philosophy that Jimmy Buffett taught me. The arts, it seems, have a lot to teach us in teaching, and probably especially us scientists. The spaces in between are filled with sympathy and empathy, inspiration and perspiration. Teaching is hard work, but it's one of those jobs in which the value of moment-by-moment inspiration is extraordinarily high and critically important to success. It's a little bit like ice hockey. Reading the script, following the playbook will get you into the offensive zone, but inspiration puts the puck in the net, and the opportunities come really, really, really fast and in really unexpected ways. You have to be ready to capitalize on all of them as they appear, and they won't be in the playbook. For those of you moving on today to new careers, I humbly submit that you will all be called on to teach at some point. Maybe not in front of a classroom, although if you get the chance, I really encourage you to do that. But you'll be called upon to explain something you understand to somebody you know at some point. And I think every parent here knows what I'm talking about. And that brings me to my final point. Ultimately, teaching is about relationships. It's about relationships between people. We call them students and teachers. But at the end of the day, we're all people. Teaching is about establishing trust, opening a dialogue, having a conversation between people. It's not possible to script every second of that conversation, and it shouldn't be. That would render education like manufacturing. And that's not possible because every student, every instructor, every person is different. Good relationships require openness, transparency, humility, understanding, and love. And they require one person to talk with and listen to another. So teaching, in the end, is really about communication. And that is why I'm thrilled to introduce my colleague and friend, communications professor Amy Child. Amy's been with the college for longer than I have, and we've had a lot of shared students. I hear so much good about Amy in her classroom and about her classes in general. Her students praise her for her knowledge, but more than that, they praise her for her personness, her humanity, her creativity, her inspiration, her obvious love and care for the discipline and for her students, and for her desire to help every student succeed. In my office, I have a piece of art created by one of Amy's students for one of her classes. To make that piece of art, the student had to go out and learn how to weld. That's inspiration. And I was thrilled to hear that Amy, for all that she does in the classroom, was nominated for this award. And I'm sure Amy could write her own talk, and I'm sure she has her own observations from her own experiences with all of you. So it's with great pride and encouragement and congratulations that I ask a few people to join me up here. I'd like to ask the previous two winners of the Bounds Award, Mr. John Haas and Professor Linda Earls, to join me down here. And I'd like to invite Professor Amy Childs.
Thank you, Greg. Greg knows I hate following him on a program. And congratulations, Amy, and we look forward to a great 2 years. Most people who want to see the college president call my assistant and make an appointment. Of course, some of them don't do that unless they absolutely have to. I hope it's because of the position and not the person, but I know it's intimidating to come see the president. But Ed Baker is not most people. I have had more conversations with Ed Baker than almost any other faculty member, none of which were by appointment. Ed Baker stops by when the Spirit moves him. He tells me what's on his mind, pays me lots of compliments, thank you, Ed, or tells me how I can make things better. I hear his voice, and I know I may as well put down whatever I'm doing. Ed has a story to tell, and I will be richer for it. We have actually only had one difficult conversation, and that was when I asked him to be tonight's commencement speaker. He immediately suggested that I ask one of the other long-serving, retiring faculty. You are the most senior, I replied, and I am asking you to represent all of them. And to that, he agreed. And now you, the graduates, will be the richer for it. Please welcome to the podium tonight's keynote speaker, Chesapeake College coach, teacher, mentor, colleague, and friend, who has served with distinction for 43 years, Dr. Edward S. Baker.
Thank you. Thank you.
They say that wisdom has two parts. The first part is having a lot to say. The second part is not saying it. I want to warn you that I struggle with that second part, okay? I don't know how many have ever watched the TV show Sesame Street. When one of those characters come out, and by the way, Oscar is my favorite because he lives in a trash can, you know what I mean? And anyway, each episode is brought to you by a word and a number. So my talk tonight is going to be brought to you by the word passion. That's my favorite word. And by the number 11, because that's my favorite number, okay? And the other thing that I wanted to share with you is that you never know when it's time for you to retire. In 10 days, I'm going to retire from 43 years at this fine institution. And I'll tell you how I really know for sure. If you've ever had a class with me, you know that I never have anybody introduce themselves on the first day. I tell you, I want you to go think about a creative introduction. And after you get a great creative introduction, then you come on back and you tell me you're ready, and I will call on you, and I expect you to wow me, see? So I had this young lady who was a dual enrollment student, and she was going to Easton High School and taking a class at Chesapeake College. And it's her turn for the introduction. And she looked at me and she said, "You taught my grandfather." And I said, "Wow," you know? So anyway, oh, come on, that's not that funny yet. So what I'm going to do with you tonight is I'm going to take you on an imaginary tour to my favorite special places that I've ever been to on this earth. One is my office that was, for 40 years, that was torn down over there. And now all you're going to see over there is dirt and air, but I loved that place, I really did. And the other one is our home, where we live today. It's called Baker's Acres. Isn't that a great name, by the way? And I just want to tell you a little bit about Baker's Acres before we get into Baker's Acres. You come down a dirt road, and you hit our first driveway, and you go approximately 1,000 feet, and you cross a culvert. And right in front of you is a huge tree. I planted that tree many years ago, picked it up at Adkins Arboretum, and that's my stress tree. And the first advice that I want to give you is when you get a chance, you plant a stress tree. The purpose of a stress tree is real simple. I cross that culvert. If I have any negative stress whatsoever, I take it out of my head and I throw it in the tree. Then I go back up to our home, and then in the morning when I come out and I pass that stress tree, the tree does one of two things. It either gives me the stress back if I need it for the day, or it says, nah, you don't need this stress, and it just mumbles it all up. And so I just love that tree. And it's about 40 feet tall now, so it can hold a lot of stress. But the point is, that's what we do. What I'm going to do, I've taught 3 courses over my years here at Chesapeake College. A course called Wellness for Life, aerobic and anaerobic conditioning, and stress management. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through those courses and predominantly focusing on the 7 components of wellness in the Wellness for Life class. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about, on this tour, things that I had in my office, on the desk, on the walls, sayings, quotes, same at home, so you can understand why I put them up there. The first component is called spirituality. There was a gentleman by the name of Dr. Dean Ornish who said, his definition of spirituality was to have a connection between 3 things: yourself, others, and a higher power. And I'll talk to you a lot in a little bit about that connection between yourself and others, but you have to have a higher power. You have to have a higher power. And hopefully, it doesn't necessarily have to be religion, but it has to be something you can turn to because life is tougher than us, so you have to have it. The second thing I want you to understand is I want you to establish high standards. My definition of standards is an acceptable level of performance. So you're talking about things like ethics, morals, values, and the first thing you have to do is fix yourself. You have to really take a look in a mirror sometime, and this is where this connection comes in, and you establish these things like values, ethics, and everything like that to make your own standards. But you don't make them too perfect because you don't want to disappoint yourself. You make them reasonable. You make them realistic. And the greatest advice that I could ever give you is this. When you decided to stay with somebody as a life partner for the rest of your life, you make sure that your standards are here. And do not accept anyone that does not come up to your standards. It's one of the biggest mistakes made in life. The next thing, as far as spirituality is concerned, is one of my favorite stories. And I apologize to some of you that have already heard it numerous times. But a professor stood in front of his class, and he had a big jar. And on the jar, he wrote, "The Jar of Life." And the first thing he did was he picked up a burlap sack. And in the burlap sack, he had all kinds of rocks. And he dumped the rocks in all the way up to the top. And then he reached down and he got a bucket of gravel. And he poured it in. And the gravel, of course, went through. And then he picked up a bucket of sand and he poured that in and it went through. And then his last bucket contained water. Now, the moral of this story is twofold. The first thing you have to do in life is you have to have a lot of rocks. And what's a rock? My simple definition of a rock is anything in your life that can give you meaning, direction, or purpose or passion. And so you better have them, and you better fill the jar up first, because the gravel and the sand and the water are negative things. We can't always control that. They're going to come into our life every single day. So what you have to understand is they're coming. So how are you going to fight them? How you're going to fight them is with a lot of rocks. Now, one of my favorite stories, if you've ever taken my class, you know I require something called a creative project. There are only 2 rules to my creative project. Must be creative, must share it with us. This young man got up there one day, He had just broken up with his girlfriend of 5 years, and he was really hurting. And so he said, for my creative project, I'm going to write a song about how I think and feel. And he reached into his case, and he pulled out this guitar. And he looked at the class, and he said, before I start class, I'd like to introduce you to my boulder. And it took us a second, but we realized what that was. Now, this is for all you gentlemen, right? I went home that night, went up to my dear wife, and I said, darling, you're my boulder. And she said, you're what? So this is what you got to do with women, guys. You got to tell them the rock story first, okay? Before you go any further, say. The next component is social. I'm going to tell you something about everybody sitting there, the graduates tonight. Most of you can do one of two things fairly well. Most of you can talk, or most of you can listen fairly well. Very rarely, unless you work on it hard and you know how to work on it, do you find a person who can talk and listen. Now, the way I express talking is a person's ability to express what they think and feel. You always want to understand the basic rights theory. And what does that mean? It means at all times you got to protect their rights and yours. In order to speak, in order to talk, you want to understand assertiveness. And the definition of assertiveness is the ability to express what you think and feel without infringing on the rights of others. Listening is very interesting. One of my favorite quotes is that the greatest listeners in the world retain about 5% of what they hear 2 weeks later if they don't write it down. Those are the best listeners. Now, I'm going to give you a little hint. I had to work on one of those two things, okay? And I want you to see what you can come up with that. There's a young lady, I went to a listening seminar, and I walked in there, and the first thing we did was have to take a quiz on how well we listened. The person sitting beside it graded mine. I got a Z on it, okay? And I went home, and I found out that night that I was a horrible listener. There's a young lady behind me who's my oldest daughter and a professor in a nursing program, and I called her. And I said, honey, you remember all those wonderful talks that we had when you were in middle school and high school? And she said, yes. And I said, you never opened your mouth, did you? And she said, I couldn't. You did all the talking. Now, everybody laughs at that, but I'm going to tell you how bad I felt. And I said, I'm going to tell you what, I'm going to make you a deal. What we're going to do is you're going to learn to talk and express what you think and feel. And I'm going to learn how to listen, and we're going to practice on one another for the rest of our lives. And we have done that. And so I suggest that, with you, that you examine and get that connection of which one you do better than the other, and you work on it. The other thing that I want to tell you to do is form what I call a one-hand social support system. That's 5 people. And you make sure those people aren't necessarily your family members. One of the greatest, most inspirational coaches that ever lived was a gentleman by the name of Vince Lombardi, who called his Green Bay Packers in the first day of training camp and said, from this day on, there will be 3 things in your life: God, your family, and the Green Bay Packers. And what's interesting about that is when you form a group like this, you make your religion, or whatever it is that you want to call it, number 1, and then your family, and then you go to your group, okay? Now, who do you pick for that group? You pick somebody who has earned your trust and respect. There's only 2 words in the English language that we must earn, and that's trust and respect. I can't walk up to you and say, trust me. I can't walk up to you and say, respect me. I must earn that. So make them earn it to get on there. Why 5? Because you have enough information that you can get through anything. And if there's ever a conflict, you take a vote and somebody's going to win, see? And so it's a great, great number. So form one. The other thing I'm going to tell you is make sure you look for users and takers. And there's nothing wrong with having somebody on that group who uses you and takes you, and then get them off. Get them off quick, okay? And replace them with somebody else. The next area I want to talk about is something called emotional wellness. And we'll spend a little time on that because in our society today, we have so many people who have major concerns with emotional, psychological, and mental concerns as compared to physical concerns. So you have to understand emotion. Emotion is 2 things in order to be successful. You have to be able to express emotion. You have to be able to tell somebody how much you truly love them. There is a sign in my office that my wife gave me. It says, unless you love someone, nothing else matters. So make sure you always have someone to love. The other word I like to use is the word like. And my youngest is sitting over here. When she was in college, I remember, my wife would call her and talk to her for 45 minutes, and I would get 3. And so during one of the times that we talked, she said, I said, honey, how are you? How's your love life, sweetie? And I will never forget this as long as I live. She said, I think I'm in like. And I stopped and thought about that a little bit. I understand something about that word. You might love somebody. You're going to love them at different levels every day. But you're not going to necessarily like them every day. So when you're likable, you got something special, see? And I had a person send me an email the other day that I taught 20-some years ago that told me, I just wanted you to know that I'm in like. And so they remembered that. So that was sensational. As we travel through these components of wellness, the next one I want to talk about, well, before I leave emotion, because this is very important. I spent a lot of time teaching stress management. Let me tell you this real quick. I could tell you right now that the 4 top killers in our society are heart disease, cancer, stroke, and COPDs. But what I really should tell you is the number 1 killer is our inability to control stress and tension. The inability to do that kills more people than anything else that I know. And so what do you do about it? Well, in order to have stress, you have to have 2 things. You have to have something to initiate a response and a reaction. Without both, you don't have stress. Now understand, this stress is good to motivate you, and it also can kill you. So one of the things to always understand, just like the sand and the gravel and all that kind of stuff, we can't always control what initiates negative response. However, we have total control of our response. One of my favorite quotes came from a young lady by the name of Eleanor Roosevelt, who said, no one can upset you without your consent. And always remember that, okay? The other thing, too, to always understand about stress management is that as you're working with it, to me, if somebody said, what is the absolute best thing I've ever learned about stress management? Well, there's 2 things. One thing is to be able to identify, and that's the key word, everything in your life that gives you negative and positive reaction. And so when you have that positive list, you go up to them every day and you say, I love you and I like you and I appreciate you and thank you for being in my life. And if you know the negative, then you can work what we call interventions to reduce the duration and degree and frequency of negative thought and reaction. And without knowing it, you don't have anything. But the number 1 way to control stress is your ability to change negative perception. If you go into the hallway of Baker's Acres, you will see a young man whose picture is on the wall. And I coached him in the 70s. His name is Dave Haslett. He unfortunately suffered for 14 years from the worst disease I've ever seen. It's called ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. And in the last 10 years of his life, he laid there on life support, and he literally could only move his eyes. Now, they had this situation set up for him so that he literally was able to type. And so every single time I left his house, I went down there 2 times a week to give him therapy, physical therapy. And every time I left his house, I never had a negative thought. I never had a negative concern because I was able to count my own blessings. You need something like that in your life. He had a phrase that he typed for me, and he played it every time I walked out of his home. It said this: thank you very much for coming to help me today. I love you very much, and the Steelers suck. Hey! All right. So, the next component is something called intellectual. Bruce Lee once said that life itself is our greatest teacher, and we are in a constant state of learning. We learn every day. My advice to you is to learn something positive every day and put it into your life. Learn more if you want, but at least one thing a day, make it positive and learn it. Behind me, the young lady that just received that very prestigious award, I always would call her and ask her questions, Miss Amy Childs, and she would have the answer every time. So many, many years ago, I gave her the name Yoda, and that's what I called her, you know. She's just a sweetheart. So she said to me, she said, okay, if I'm Yoda, you have to pick a character from Star Wars that you're going to be. Well, I didn't know that much about Star Wars, so I started to search. And I came up with one that I really love. His name was Salacious Crumb. And if you don't know who he was a rat that lived in the blubber of Jabba the Hutt. And, you know, I liked his laugh, and you got to hear him sometime laugh. It was absolutely sensational. The next component that we want to get to is physical. At home, on a refrigerator magnet, I have a little phrase that says, make sure you take good care of your body, because if you don't, you'll have no place to live. And I love that. Learn how to do aerobic exercise and anaerobic exercise correctly. If you go down into our exercise room in our home, we have a sign on the wall that Nike developed years ago, and it simply says, there is no finish line. And I love it. And that's what it means to me. There'll never be a finish line for me working out in this life. The next component, very simply, we want to talk about is something called occupational wellness. And what does that mean? It means you have to have a balance in everything that you do in life. You have to be able to understand that you are going to be going through, and you already have, a survival contest. You're going to be poor, okay? There's nothing wrong with that. There's two people sitting over here that are lifelong friends, 50 years plus. And we met in college. We got married in college. We had our first child in college in West Virginia, and we lived right beside one another in a trailer park. Now understand, that was a requirement in West Virginia. If you lived there for 6 months, you had to be in a trailer park after that, see? But the point that I want you to understand is you have to give up some things to be successful. Back in those days, I remember we would sit there, the four of us, and we were so poor we couldn't even pay attention. But the point was, we got through. And we got through where we are today, okay? The other thing that's so important about learning something, and a lot of you are blessed to have your grandparents and have your great-grandparents still alive. You want to practice your social skills, you go talk to them. You go practice your listening skills with them. One of the favorite things I ever heard was, every time an elderly person leaves this earth, it's comparable to a library burning to the ground. So make sure you don't miss that, and get involved with them, because they have so much to give you, believe me. The next one that we want to talk about very quickly is environmental. And what's that mean? Understand sustainability. Understand the ecology and culture and economy of any place that you live. Volunteer. Do whatever you can do to help, okay? And then I'm going to leave you with one last thing. My dear wife, had many rules and regulations and laws for our daughters. I had 2. So I'm going to leave those 2 rules with you. The first rule was to never quit. I always told them, I don't care what you get involved with. You can play sports, you can be in a band, you can do this, you can do that. But if you commit, you do not quit. You never learn to quit the first time. Because if you do, it becomes easier to quit every time after that. So don't learn the first time. One of the greatest, most courageous speeches I ever heard was by a coach at NC State by the name of Jimmy Valvano. And he has an organization. He was dying of cancer as he was talking to the group on the ESPYs. And his cancer fund today is called the Jimmy V Fund. And his motto is very simple. Don't give up. Don't ever give up. The second rule that we had was, you're going to give your best, okay? And I'm going to reflect that with 3 quick things. In my day, my idol was a gentleman by the name of John Wooden, who was the coach at UCLA. And he had this quote. It simply said, success is a direct peace of mind in knowing that you have become the best that you're capable of becoming. Sitting over there is a young lady that loved her father dearly. He was a head football coach for 48 years in Montgomery County. He just touched the lives of thousands and thousands of football players and students that he taught. But he also had a quote, and the quote was very simple. He said it before every game that his football team played. When you leave this, all I'm going to ever ask of you is, when you leave this field today, you will give me your best. The last one, very simply, I have this quote in a room in my office, and see if, in my home, and see if you can picture this for me. It simply says, it has a picture of the ocean, and the sun is setting at the end of the ocean. And it has for its title the word passion, my favorite word. And then the quote is this simple: when the day is over and you gave your best, make sure that you can live with the results in peace. But you have to give your best first, okay? Thank you very much to you and the other over 12,000 students that gave me meaning, direction, purpose, and passion in my life every day when I came to Chesapeake College. I love you. God bless you. God bless our troops.
Thank you, Dr. Baker, for laughter and inspiration. And I would also like to thank all of our retiring faculty and staff who have played such a critical role in the education of so many students over the years. It is my pleasure now to present two members of the class of 2014 who've excelled during their time at Chesapeake and will share the 2014 John T. Harrison Award. Let me give you a little background on John T. Harrison and the award, and a little bit on the two young women who will receive it. John T. Harrison was a Talbot County member of Chesapeake College's founding board of trustees, and this is, we're talking back in the late 60s. The college community is indebted to him for its establishment prior to our first announcement or commencement of the John T. Harrison Award, which is given each year to the student who has demonstrated the highest performance in academics, leadership, and overall contributions to the college and to the community. The 51st and the 52nd recipients of this award embody all the qualities we have come to expect from our recipients. The winners have each developed records of impressive academic achievement, matured into respected student leaders, and dedicated themselves to regular service within their communities. There is Michelle Lance, who has a 4.0 grade point average and has been accepted at Salisbury University. She plans to complete her bachelor's degree in social work at the Eastern Shore Higher Education Center right here on our campus. She has been an elementary school character counts coach, a middle school service learning volunteer, a volunteer tutor here at Chesapeake, and is a Children's Mental Health Family Institute trained trustee. Shailene McLam, who is a member of the All-Maryland Community College academic team, has a 3.85 average, and the fall she'll be attending North Carolina State University. She plans to major in meteorology. She is a Chesapeake College Leadership Academy graduate who has served as a PTK Honor Society executive board member, vacation Bible school teacher, and swim coach, in addition to her volunteer work at multiple private and county animal shelters. Please help me welcome to the podium Michelle Lance and Shailene McLam, the co-winners of the John T. Harrison Award. I didn't disappear. Don't want to drop it, Michelle. Welcome. Our first speaker will be Michelle.
Thank you very much. I am honored to have been chosen as co-winner of the John T. Harrison Award, and I would also like to thank my classmate and co-winner, Shaylin McLam. How exciting it is to be graduating today, and wow, I must say, it's a good thing I took stress and stress management with Dr. Baker, because at this very moment, I am applying many of those stress management techniques. When I first started at Chesapeake 3 years ago, I did not know how to manage my stress. I have learned from Dr. Baker that the key to stress management is the ability to identify what is causing the stress. Like other parents who have special needs children, I knew what most of my stressors were, but I was paralyzed with fear because I felt consumed with anxiety. I learned that anxiety is actually unrealistic fear. I feared going to college. I feared because of the what ifs. What if school called and I had to pick up a sick child? I came up with every scenario. There were times when my fears were realized. That's called life, and I managed through it. Some of my anxiety was also brought on by my low self-confidence. I am hearing impaired and have always been afraid of the humiliation that I felt as a child when others made fun of my slight speech impediment or laughed when I gave the wrong answers. I had contemplated going to college ever since I graduated from high school, but I just didn't know how to go about doing it. It was too easy for me to tell myself that I wasn't cut out for college. I didn't even know the difference between a graduate student and an undergraduate student until my first semester here at Chesapeake. I told myself that once I enrolled, there would be no stopping me. With the support and encouragement of my family, I enrolled at Chesapeake in March of 2011. I cried when I received my acceptance letter. It meant so much to me. Mrs. Judy Gordon, Chesapeake's Developmental Disabilities Coordinator, helped me to overcome some of my old fears. She was one of my first contacts here at Chesapeake, and she made me feel right at home. She guided me through the accommodations process and was one of the first to notice that I cared about my education and that I took it seriously. Over time, others began to notice. I'll never forget when Professor Harper asked me for permission to use my essay paper as a sample. I thought, me? He said, you remind me that this work can be done. Or when Professor Haas told me that I would have no problem handling the expectations of four-year colleges. Mrs. Goldsboro, my art instructor, told me she saw no reason why I couldn't earn my four-year degree and beyond. I really did wonder, me? I just didn't understand. But standing here today, I realized, yes, me, I can do it. B.J. Mills, who assisted me with my first PowerPoint project, always encouraged me every time I went to her for help and guidance. I finally told myself that the people who work here at Chesapeake are the professionals. If they are telling me that I can do it, then I'm going to start telling myself that I can do it. And I'm also going to take Ms. Child's advice and enjoy this night, and so should you. We've all worked so very hard to reach this goal, and I know, like you, I couldn't have done it on my own. While encouragement from my professors was one sort of source of motivation for me, another source was my family. They never doubted my abilities, ever. And my husband, Gerald, he kept us all alive by going to the grocery store and cleaning the house and making dinner. I don't know how many times I promised my husband, as soon as I'm done this paper, I promise I'll get dinner started, only to have him hand me a plate of food 30 minutes later. Without my husband's support, I would not be graduating today. So I want to say thank you to my family and to everyone here at Chesapeake who helped make this happen, and to Dr. Baker, who sponsored my PTK membership. Your belief in my abilities and in me as a person boosted my self-esteem so much. Thank you. I am grateful for having the opportunity to take your classes before your retirement. So grateful. I sincerely look forward to giving back to Chesapeake and being a part of the Alumni Association. Graduates, please don't forget to thank those who helped you along the way. and friends and family, maybe some of you are sitting here tonight wondering, maybe I could get a degree from Chesapeake. Or maybe you're wondering, should I go back and get that 4-year degree? Should I enroll in that master's program? I'm here to tell you to go for it. And guess what? I checked with Dr. Midcap, and Chesapeake College is open for business tomorrow. Come back. See how easy it is to enroll. Chesapeake is here to help you. You won't know what your options are unless you ask. Elizabeth Cady Stanton said, "To throw obstacles in the way of a complete education is like putting out the eyes." Well, my ears are already shot, so I'm not going to lose my eyes too. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michelle. That was beautiful, and I'm honored and blessed to be co-recipient and share this award with you. For those of you who may not know me, I'm Shayla McLam, although most everyone here calls me Shay. I am truly honored, blessed, and humbled to be named co-recipient of this award, and to overall be standing here today as a graduate of Chesapeake College. About 15 years ago, instead of taking the traditional public or specialized private school route, my crazy and psychotic loving mother decided to homeschool. She was a certified public accountant and decided to end her office job, which back in the 1990s, a woman leaving her office job to raise children was not the most accepted career move, and neither was homeschooling. As I grew older, I began dealing with the one question every homeschooler is asked: how do you socialize? When I was not doing schoolwork in my pajamas, I was part of a large homeschool group filled with many of my friends and kids of all ages. I did a lot of volunteer work, coached a swim team, and started my own business at the age of 11. I may not have socialized with kids exactly my age and grade, but I spent time working with people of all ages. To me, being homeschooled meant getting my schoolwork done in 1 to 2 hours, then spending the rest of the day working, volunteering at local animal shelters, or, as you can tell by my cap, drooling over anything and everything weather-related. Ever since my first assignment to track Hurricane Floyd, I have been so absolutely passionate about meteorology, or, as Dr. Baker calls it, weatherology. And the free time from being homeschooled has allowed me to spend countless hours learning more about hurricanes, thunderstorms, and tornadoes. Now, that will be my field of study as I begin my journey at North Carolina State University. My time at Chesapeake has not only been an introduction to higher education, but the ultimate test whether someone who does their schoolwork in pajamas can excel at college. While my professors and advisors here can assure you that excel would be an understatement, and to them, I apologize for my psychotic overachiever problems. Because of the support and motivation from family, friends, and the faculty members, I stand here today not only as a graduate of Chesapeake College, but also as a graduate of Leadership Academy, a Regional Distinguished Chapter Officer of Phi Theta Kappa, a member of the All-Maryland Community College Academic Team, a recipient of Chesapeake College's Student Achievement Award, and co-recipient of Chesapeake College's John T. Harrison Award. Thank you to my wonderful and loving family who is here today that have supported me in every way possible. Thank you to my awesome friends that have provided hugs, humor, and countless sanity checks. Love you guys. Lastly, I thank the amazing professors, faculty, and staff of Chesapeake College that put up with me, guided me to where I am today, and helped build the foundation for my continued education at North Carolina State. Thank you all, and congratulations to the class of 2014.
Michelle and Shay, I would like to add my congratulations to you both for all of your achievements at Chesapeake, including selection as this year's Harrison Award co-winners. And now for the moment you've been waiting for, the conferral of degrees. Members of the audience are welcome to take photos from their seats, but we do need to ask you not to block the aisles or area in front of the stage so that the graduates have easy access to the stage. Photographs of every graduate receiving his or her diploma will be available. We appreciate your understanding. Dr. Viniar, before I present the candidates for graduation, I would once again like to acknowledge our outstanding Chesapeake College faculty. Would the faculty please stand and be recognized? And now I would like to note the exceptional group of Chesapeake College faculty members retiring this year and their individual years of service. Would each of you please stand? Associate Professor Nancy Hubbard, 15 years. Associate Professor Laura Higgs, 16 years. Associate Professor Donna Andrew, 21 years. Professor James Plum, 24 years. Professor Stan Cash, who could not be here tonight, has served the college for 26 years. Associate Professor Jerry Healy, 42 years. And Professor Ed Baker, 43 years. Thank you so much for your service to the college and our students. And now, Dr. Viniar, I have the pleasure of presenting to you those individuals in the graduate record who, by recommendation of the faculty and the approval of the Board of Trustees, have completed all of the requirements for certificates. Will the candidates for certificates please stand? Lauren Ann Brelia. Georgia Ann Byers. Lindsay Brooke Chase. Melissa Danielle Faulkner. Anthony S. Jefferson. Sochi Yamas. Rachel Nicole Nelson. Courtney Michelle Parks. Brittany Christine Robertson. Tehran W. Cisco. Megan Ann Wetzel. James D'Angelo Williams. Taylor Phippen Wood. Will the candidates for the associate degree, please rise. Dr. Viniar, I have the pleasure of presenting to you those individuals in the official graduate record who, by recommendation of the faculty and the approval of the Board of Trustees, have completed all of the requirements for the degrees of Associate of Arts, Associate of Science, Associate of Arts in Teaching, and the Associate of Applied Science. The candidates may be seated. Carson Trevor Adams. LaShawn K. Adams. Deepak Adhikari. Brenda Alexander. Victoria Nicole Alexander. Catherine Johnstone Allen. And I'd like to mention that we have 5 students today who are graduating from the honors program. I think we had 2 last year and 1 the year before. So this is really extraordinary. And each of them is going to receive a medallion. So I'm going to hand the medallion to the president so that she can give that to them along with their diploma. The first one of those students is Andrea Lyles Anderson. Wendy Wangan Apolos. Sorry. Wangay. Wangay. Marshall Aaron Bailey. Sarah K. Balthus. Clara Lisa Batson. Daniel John Bayless. Nicole Graham Bozarth. No. Victoria Elizabeth Bradley. No, Mary? Eleanor Blades? I'm sorry, I skipped one. Eleanor Lee Blades. I don't usually do that. Sorry. Nicole? Nicole Graham Bozarth. Victoria Elizabeth Bradley. Mary Elizabeth Brittingham. Hannah Elizabeth Brockmeyer. Derek Gerard Brummel, Jr. Kara S. Brummel. Crystal Nicole Bryan. Aubrey Marie Burton. And our next graduate, Caitlin Ann Casey, is also a graduate of the honors program. Brittany Morgan Casper. Odinga Omari Chenoweth. Alexis Gabrielle Chibanier. Elizabeth Ann Churchill. Jennifer Lee Clow. Anna Maria Collins, outstanding graduate, early childhood program. Joseph Dominic Costello, Jr. Rachel Eileen Cox. Michaela Macy Crawford. Shannon Michelle Christ, outstanding student, paralegal studies. Amy Elizabeth Crooks. Mark William Cutter. Dina Davis Daniels. Raymond Mace Davis, Jr. Ashley Elizabeth Dieter. Angela Michelle Dennis. Another graduate of our honors program, Michael John Leon Donahue. Courtney Nicole Dragovich. Lindsay Michelle Duckworth. Quentin Jovan Duncan. Not Ryan. Ryan Michelle Durden. Caitlin Michelle English. Heather Lene Etchison. Justin William Everngam. Cindy Ann Faya. Taylor, no. Whitney Elizabeth Flower. Shannon Marie Garcia Pierce, outstanding student, accounting. Laura Grace Gleason. Kevin Michael Gleckler. Angela Marie Green. Rihanna Greenfield. David Allen Greer. Catherine Rose Haas. Carrie Lee Harper. Benjamin A. Hearn. Sorry. Katie Lynn Heverin. Caleb Andrew Hignott. Andrea Faye Robar. Melinda Ann Hutcherson. Megan Ann Jameson. Dimitri Edward Jenkins. Michelle Lee Jennings. Courtney Amber Jester. Chandra Tawanda Johnson. Tyler Stephen Johnson. Christina Marie Kaufman. Michelle Elizabeth Kelling. Stephanie Marie Kemper. Jennifer Jean Kendall. Ashley S. Kern. Terry Lynn Culp. Ashley Marie Lane. Kristen Lee Lane. Michelle Lee Lance. Marie Kayla Lemon. Brad Lee Libby. Jonathan Lawrence Lithicum. James Kevin Long. Anita Ruth Lord. Caitlin Amber Lynch. Kelly Sherwood Lyons. Rebecca Grace Lyons. We have another graduate of the honors program, Whitney Page Mangum. She is also the outstanding student in liberal arts and sciences. Bryce Torbert Manship, Emily Noel Manship, Christy Lee Marciniak, Brianne Devon Marshall, Melissa Cheryl Marie Martelli, Joseph Ryan Martin, Sam Heister Martin, Cassandra D. McCreary, Taylor Leanne McLaughlin, and the final graduate of our honors program, Shaylin Elise McLam. Shannon Renee Mensch, Sydney Bonds Milner, Carolyn Renee Mister, Stephanie Janelle Malik, Tanika Monique Moody, Danielle Lee Moore, Susan Rideout Moore, Mary C. Moran, Outstanding Student, Human Services. Kristen Nicole Moreland. Lauren Page Murphy. Tyra Avon Danielle Nickens. Amanda Marie North. Marguerite Helen Pedersen. William Holt Penninger III. Lauren Olivia Phillips. Brendan Lane Poole. Emily Marie Powell. Shane Lee Pratt. Malin Ann Redmond. Summers Ann Reese. Kristen Sue Reed, Outstanding Student, Computer Information Systems. Matthew Calvin Rhine. Jennifer Erin Robbins. Mary Elizabeth Robbins. Jeffrey Allen Rogers. Volita V. Ross. Megan Aaron Rue. Amy Adele Rust. Maisha Lavette Sampson. Kendall Rose Savage. Matthew Edward Chenault. Alexandra Marie Shore. John Martin Scott. Courtney Lynn Sherman. Brianna Marie Sipes. Danielle Elise Smith. Caitlin P. Smith. Christopher M. Sotomayor. William Cody Staton. Joseph G. Steneker. Scott L. Stitchberry. Melissa D. Strickland. Courtney Joe Sturgill. L. Christiane Thibodeau. Ruth S. Thomas. Heather Danielle Thompson. Christine Elizabeth Tucker. Matthew Robert Tucker. Abby Mae Tyner. Kellyanne Louise Tyner. Gregory Todd Usselton, Jr. Sarah Jane Vilwach. Brianne Elizabeth Walters. Lakeisha Weinstein. Carol Louise Wells. Jordan Marie Welzel. Nikki Renee West. Courtney Jane Whitby, outstanding student, teacher education, elementary education. Carrie L. White. Catherine Rose Wilson. Jeffrey Douglas Winslow. Lauren Nicole Winstead. Julia Euchre. You.
Will all the certificate and degree candidates please rise? By virtue of the authority vested in me by the Board of Trustees of Chesapeake College, I confer upon you the certificates, degrees of Associate of Arts, Associate of Science, Associate of Arts in Teaching, and Associate of Applied Science, with all the attendant rights and responsibilities. You are now official graduates of Chesapeake College. As a symbol of your new status, you may move your tassels from the right to the left. Congratulations. There is a story about Abraham Lincoln and one of his aides visiting a church whose pastor was renowned for his eloquent sermons. True to form, the sermon that day was smart, powerful, and to most listeners, impressive. Upon leaving the service, the aide turned to the president and asked what he thought about it. "It was an acceptable sermon," the president replied. Surprised, the aide asked what was missing. "He didn't ask anything great of us," Lincoln replied. So tonight I ask great things from you. Chesapeake College asks great things from you. But most of all, I hope your time here has encouraged you to ask great things from yourself. Again, congratulations and best wishes for your continued success. Associate Professor John Haas, Chair of Chesapeake's Faculty Assembly, will now read the benediction. Following the benediction and the recessional, please join us at a reception for our graduates, family, and friends in the Caroline College Center. We would appreciate it if all guests would remain in place and standing until the academic recession has been completed. Please rise.
Eternal light, shine into our hearts. Eternal goodness, deliver us from evil. Eternal power, be our support. Eternal wisdom, scatter the darkness of our ignorance. Eternal pity, have mercy on us, so that with our heart and mind and soul and strength, we may seek the wisdom, goodness, and strength to make this world a better place. Amen.